lastly, we end with the concept of discourse community. So please be so kind as to download this document, which are the notes from this article, Literacy, Discourse, and Linguistics, Introduction by James Paul G. So I have synthesized for you a pretty long article. You can take a look at it. I included it in last week's module. You can look at it if you wish to. But I've actually synthesized the main things from it here. So if communities of practice is the what, right, then discourse is the how. So James Paul G calls a discourse an identity kit, which includes how to act in a community, how you talk in it, the values, maybe even how you write in it if it's applicable, the clothes that you wear. So check this out here. This is a direct quote. So it says, discourses are ways of being in the world. They are forms of life which integrate words, acts, values, beliefs, attitudes, and social identities, as well as gestures, glances, body positions, and clothes. So because I said it's the how of a certain community, then think of it as the lens through which you operate in a given community. So for example, a doctor views the world in a specific way, and because of it, they use specialized medical terminology that reflects just that lens of how they view the world. Same thing with a factory worker. So if you work at FedEx or Amazon, then that value of being able to move fast and being efficient and getting as much work done, then that's part of the discourse, right? That's part of how you operate within that particular community of practice. Another one that comes to mind is an engineer. Engineers value being practical, convenience, things being functional. So those are values that come with engineering. And in addition, they have specialized language. Same thing with a skater, right? If their value is, the skaters, I've heard them say balls out, which means if you get hurt, then you get hurt. So that attitude of being willing to get hurt, if that's what it takes, then that's part of the discourse. So it's that attitude, and even the language that you use, right? The names of the tricks and or slang words. So I'm going to give you these terms just because he includes them. I don't want you don't need to become so specialized, but just at least understand it. So James Paul G says that we each have both a primary discourse and a secondary discourse. This word primary is referencing first, right? And that constitutes our original and home-based identity. So whether you were socialized by your family or at an orphanage or by your grandparents, it's that initial bit of socialization when you grew up, right? And they inculcated upon you certain values, certain beliefs, a particular way of seeing the world. A good example for me is, so as a member of the Latino culture, our culture is very much about the group. It's very much collectively based. And as opposed to here in the United States, where it's very much about the individual and individualism. So my primary discourse is precisely that, is considering the group, how, and I know that throughout my classes here in the United States, there was always that conflict between how at home it made me to think about the collective, the group, how I can help the group, and then the United States was about the individual, me, right? So it's very different. And that's why it says it here. They differ across cultural, ethnic, and regional and economic groups. So the secondary discourse is precisely what I was saying, is everything outside of the primary discourse. So I mentioned that in school I was met with this ideology of individualism. Then that's part of a secondary discourse, because it's another attitude, it's another value, it's another way of seeing things, it's another lens essentially. It's like if I was to take off my glasses, and this is the discourse. This is the discourse for being an English college instructor, let's say. And with that, I'm putting this on, and then comes specialized language and a way of viewing the world and talking about things too. So that's what a secondary discourse is. And as we go into our majors and our career paths, then of course there's secondary discourses, because we're not born into the discourse of being a doctor, right? Unless our parents were doctors and they helped to shape our outlook towards the world to be very medically based, and endowed us with the specialized language of a medic. But for the most part, that doesn't happen as so much. Okay, so primary discourse is the identity kit that comes from your first socialization, whether that is from your family or whatever your first sort of upbringing was. This one, so dominant. The dominant discourse is just something that maybe it's a career path that can bring a lot of power and or money. So it's strange, but there's like an arbitrary hierarchy of what jobs are dominant and what jobs will bring you prestige and more money. Just like an attorney or a doctor or an engineer. So those are dominant discourses. And so discourse is acquired through enculturation. This word enculturation just means through interaction. So the cool example are internships. So let's say that you're in law school and you sit in classrooms for hours and hours, and you read and you write papers, and you have a theoretical understanding of what it means to be a lawyer. But then there's the internship aspect, where you actually spend time at a law firm and rub shoulders with other lawyers. So there, through interaction, you're beginning to learn the discourse of being a lawyer. The values that come with it, the specialized language, even how just how you operate on a day-to-day basis. And what's crazy is that the more time that you spend with your own major, I think this is a good example. The more time that you spend within your own major, then the more that you begin to notice how you gradually begin to take on this discourse, and you start seeing things through that lens and talking about things with the specialized language of that major. It's pretty crazy how that happens. Here's another thing. So during this period of enculturation, of moving to acquire this discourse, there's kind of like a trial type period where you're just attempting things or attempting to take on the language. So if you're in an internship and you misuse legal jargon, which is a specialized language, then other lawyers will know that you're an outsider. So there's gatekeeping in that sense. They'll be like, hey, you're still not inside yet. And you will kind of reveal that about yourself through your misuse. So it's just the point that G makes, is that through this enculturation, it's a process.